Terry and I, you know, he asked me how much time I needed. I'm going to be very brief. I'm going to talk a little bit about, since you're government affairs, we're going to talk about the state of Texas. I'll give you kind of a state of the state, because Texas has some pretty serious bragging rights right now in comparison to the rest of the nation. I have to say that we kind of had a little bit of smirk on our face as the federal government was going through all the stimulus money, and you had 49 other states standing there with their hand out needing bailout money to cover their budget. And we in Texas were sitting here going through a session with a surplus. Not only did we not have a deficit, we ended the session. We gave a tax decrease to small businesses. Any business that does less than $100,000 in business, we eliminated their franchise taxes. And at the end of the session, we ended with about $9 billion in reserve. The only state in these 50 United States that did that. And that is pretty serious bragging rights. Now, it actually goes a lot further than that. And I'm going to give you some figures, because you as a Chamber of Commerce, I think will respond to these numbers. Over the last year, in the entire United States, over 70% of all jobs created in America were created in Texas. 50 states, 70% of all jobs were generated here. This last week, I was asked to address the California legislature, the leadership of the legislature. And the purpose of that was they were asking, basically, how are y'all doing? What are you doing differently than California is? And I gave the address, and at the end of it, somebody asked the question. That was the direct question. They said, well, what are you doing differently? And I said, well, it's kind of math 101. Y'all are spending more money than you're taking in. And it's almost that simple, is that Texas, because we have a constitutional requirement for a balanced budget, we do not spend more money than we take in. We look at the revenue we have, and then we allocate the revenue. I would remind you that it was only 2003, it was less than 6 years ago, we had a $10 billion deficit that year. We didn't increase taxes, we cut spending. We skinnied down, we lived within our means, and we passed a budget with available revenues. The next year, 2004, we had a $10 billion deficit, and we raised the spending back up. Other states, and California is a good example, California has a $42 billion deficit. And it is only because they want to address the real problem and make sure that they live within their means. Now, because of that, the other things that was recognized is that the person that introduced me for the California legislature was the head of the Manufacturers Association. And the figures that he gave were pretty amazing, that he actually stole my speech, because I was going to give the same things, but he beat me to it. Over the last decade, Texas is the fastest growing state in the United States. We have grown much faster than anyone else. When we reapportion and redistricting, we're going to receive 4 new congressional seats in our delegation. They will come at the expense of California, New York, Florida. As their economies are shrinking, ours is growing. The head of the Manufacturers Association gave another very, I think, interesting figure. Over the last decade, California has lost 750,000 manufacturing jobs. There's 750,000 fewer people in California in manufacturing jobs. Over that same decade, Texas manufacturing jobs went up over 1.5 million. Basically, what happened is all the manufacturing jobs, the Fortune 500 companies, moved to Texas. Today, Texas now, we have more Fortune 500 companies that have their home office in Texas than any other state in the nation. And there's a lot of reasons for that, but the thing that all of you have done is you've expected of your elected officials, your people that you sent to Austin, that you ask several things. You want Texas to be a low tax state. We want us to take care of necessary services, but we are one of the lowest tax states. We're the only there's only 2 states that do not have a federal income tax state income tax on personal income. We have never felt the need to do that. Regulatory. Texas is one of the lowest regulatory states for a business get into business. CEO magazine, which is they do a rating of the best places in America to do business, and my friend from the Manufacturer Association told the legislature, gave them this detail. California today is number 50. They are the worst place in America to do business. Number 1 for the 4th year in a row is Texas. You know, we continue to be the breadbasket of not only America, but we're starting to become the breadbasket of the entire world. If Texas were its own nation, it would be the 7th largest economy in the entire world. We're doing a lot of things right, and that a lot of that things we're doing right flows back to the local communities, to the Chamber of Commerce locally, where they dictate back to us, this is the way we want our state to look, this is what we want to do from a business standpoint, because we understand very clearly that if new businesses move in, that generates new jobs. Those people are going to pay taxes, both city and state taxes, and that engine, the growth engine and the revenue from that gives us our growth, and because of that we've done extremely well. 2 points I think that I want to make sure that with this group that we recognize. Ralph and I this morning we were honored that this last, I'm sorry, what day were we texted on? Was it Monday? Thursday. Ongoing project that probably a few of you have heard of a few times, Interstate 35. I tried to remember, it's about the 10th time I've been before TxDOT on that project, but we went and made an appeal for another level of funding that was granted, and it will be we think the next to the last leg of the funding for 35. The last leg will be the interchange through Temple, the 3 bridges and the Northwest Loop. But it was the next to last leg, and we received that funding. The county commissioners were nice enough this morning to honor us, and they did a resolution, and Judge Burroughs and commissioners, they've had to take off, but I thank them so much for that. The other thing that I think Jimmy Don and I, it's interesting that everyone that has represented this area since I came into the Texas Senate 13 years ago, and the very first meeting that I had in Bell County I was asked to go over to the bank, and I had a group set out, and they said, well, before we talk to you about whether we're going to support you, we want to know, would you support a standalone university for Bell County? And I said, well, I'm sorry, that's a new issue to me. I'm not familiar with it. Let me do some research, and I'll get back with you. I went back, did my homework, called them back the next day, and I said, absolutely, I will carry the legislation, and I will fight for the funding to try to get a standalone institution of higher education for Bell County. 13 years ago, and we've made little steps along the way, and as of this last year, the governor signed into law in August the authorization to make that a standalone university, and authorizing the tuition revenue bonds for the new building. And Jimmy Don and Ralph, we thank you for your work, but there's a lot of thank yous to Diane and Susanna and Sid and the people that have been there through the years. We've been working on it, but that's a big victory for this community. That's other very good bragging rights. The only other issue that I want to raise is that the other piece of legislation that I carried, and this is one that I didn't get through. I passed it in the Senate, but it was stalled in the House. But it was a photo ID for voter identification. I believe very strongly that the most valuable right we have Americans is the right to vote. Under Texas law, we have a flaw in our the voter identification, is that it's too easy to cheat for unauthorized people to vote in the state of Texas. I attempted to pass a bill that was very simply that you would either show your photo ID when you're going to vote, or you show 2 other forms of identification. They could actually have been a utility bill and your library card, just to identify that you are who you say you are, because doctors, if somebody could, the day your voter registration card is mailed to you, if someone goes and steals that out of your mailbox, they take that and they go to the voting place. Under Texas law, they have to allow them to vote. There is no requirement today for you even to prove who you say you are. I passed it in the Senate. Unfortunately, it's got stranded in the House and didn't come up for a vote. But I think of all the things that we need to do, the sanctity of the right to vote should be the most important thing that government does. And I will file that bill again, and hopefully we can get that one through.